There is someone in your life right now who cannot say, "I love you." They cannot bring themselves to sit across from you and tell you what they feel. They go quiet when things get too close. They disappear after a deep conversation. They send you a random meme at 11 at night and then act like nothing happened. And you sit there wondering, does this person even care about me? Does any of this mean anything? Or am I imagining a connection that simply isn't there? I want you to stop second-guessing yourself. Because what I'm going to share with you today is not the version of this topic you've heard before. This is not about red flags. This is not about walking away. This is about understanding something that almost nobody talks about. The psychological reality of what happens inside an emotionally unavailable person when they fall deeply, genuinely, and almost helplessly in love with someone. And why, when it happens, they are the last ones who can tell you about it. Let's start at the very beginning, because the foundation of everything we're about to discuss lives here. The emotionally unavailable person you are thinking about right now did not choose to be this way. Their brain was shaped in the very earliest years of their life by an environment that taught them something terrifying. That depending on someone is a risk not worth taking. Maybe the love around them was inconsistent. Maybe affection was given and then pulled away without warning. Maybe the people who were supposed to be emotionally present simply weren't. Not because they were cruel, but because they didn't know how. And the child in that environment did what every child does. They adapted. They built walls. They learned that the only safe thing to do was to need less, feel less, and show less. That strategy kept them emotionally protected for years. The problem is, they carried it straight into adulthood, and now it's running their love life without their conscious permission. Here is what makes this so complicated and so misunderstood. The emotionally unavailable person doesn't just struggle to show feelings. In many cases, they genuinely struggle to access them. They are not hiding emotions from you. They are hiding them from themselves. Researchers studying avoidant attachment have found that these individuals often have little understanding of what they are feeling on a deeper level. They might be confused about what they want, confused about what they feel, and completely unable to articulate something that is happening inside them with enormous intensity. So when you look at them and wonder why they won't just say it, understand that the very wiring they are working with makes the act of knowing and naming a feeling one of the hardest things they can do. And yet, they feel it. That is what I need you to hold on to as we move through this. The emotional intensity inside an emotionally unavailable person when they fall in love is not smaller than what you feel. In many cases, it is bigger. The feelings are so overwhelming, so disorienting to a system that was built to suppress closeness, that the only way their nervous system knows how to respond is to protect itself more fiercely. The walls go up harder, precisely because the feeling underneath is stronger. This is not a small thing. This is not indifference dressed up as mystery. This is a person at war with themselves, and you are the reason the war started. Now let's talk about the 3 reasons why this specific person, the one who seems closed off, distant, or emotionally out of reach, is madly in love with you. Because there are 3 very distinct psychological doors through which this happens, and almost no one is discussing any of them. The first reason is this: you made them feel safe without demanding emotional performance. Think about what that means for a moment. Every emotionally unavailable person has spent years, sometimes decades, in relationships or near relationships where they were expected to show up in a way that felt impossible for them. Be more open, be more vulnerable, tell me how you feel. And each time someone made that demand, their nervous system heard something else entirely. It heard, you are not enough as you are. It heard your natural way of being is a problem to be fixed. And so they either performed emotions they didn't have access to, or they left. What you did, and you may not have even realized you were doing it, is something different. You were present without pressure. You were consistent without conditions. You created an environment where they didn't have to earn closeness by dismantling their defenses on your timeline. And for a nervous system that has been braced for impact since childhood, that kind of safety is not ordinary. It is revolutionary. It is the thing they have been quietly waiting for without knowing they were waiting for it. Researchers who study avoidant attachment consistently find that these individuals open up, sometimes dramatically, when they encounter a person who doesn't require emotional performance as proof of care. You didn't ask them to change, and that changed everything. The second reason is something that sounds counterintuitive, but stay with me. The fact that they have been pulling away from you is not evidence that they don't care. It is evidence that they do. This withdrawal behavior has a clinical name, deactivation, and it is one of the most misread signals in all of human psychology. When an emotionally unavailable person begins to deactivate, when they go quiet, when they create distance, when they suddenly find fault with small things that never bothered them before, it is because their attachment system has been triggered. And attachment systems only activate around people who matter. You cannot be triggered by someone you are indifferent to. Indifference requires no defense. The walls only go up when there is something worth protecting against. So here is the translation of their withdrawal that no therapist ever puts on a social media caption. The moment they pulled away from you was the moment they realized you had gotten close enough to actually threaten their emotional protection system. They did not pull away because you meant nothing. They pulled away because you meant too much, and that terrified them. Now here is where it gets even more specific and more powerful. When someone is deeply in love with an emotionally unavailable person, there is a pattern worth watching. The withdrawal cycles, how long they disappear, how far they retreat, begin to shorten over time. The person who used to vanish for 2 weeks starts coming back in 3 days, then 2, then 1. They are not doing this consciously. Their trust in you is quietly, slowly overriding their fear, and that is the most honest signal they are capable of giving you right now. The third reason is the one that almost nobody talks about, and I think it is the most important of the three. You stayed consistent while they tested you, even though you had no idea you were being tested. Because here is the brutal and rarely spoken truth about emotionally unavailable people. They expect it. At the cellular level of their emotional experience, they believe, without ever consciously deciding to believe it, that the people they love will eventually leave, pull away, or prove themselves unreliable. So they run a test they will never tell you about. They create distance to see if you chase. They go cold to see if you punish them. They pick a fight to see if you abandon them for it. They reveal a small piece of themselves and then disappear for 48 hours to see if you're still there when they return. And when you were still there, not perfectly, not without confusion or hurt, but present, something shifted in them that very few people ever get to shift. Their relational script was disrupted. The story they had been telling themselves about what love ultimately does ran into contradicting evidence, and that evidence was you. You did not leave when they expected you to. And for someone who has organized their entire emotional life around the assumption of loss, that is not a small thing. That is the ground moving beneath them. Now, once an emotionally unavailable person has crossed that threshold, once those three things have happened, and they are genuinely, deeply in love, the way they express it is so different from what most people recognize as love that it is almost invisible. And this is where so many people give up, right at the moment when they should be looking closer. Watch for the micro details. An emotionally unavailable person who loves you will remember things about your life with a precision that seems almost unsettling. The park you mentioned once in passing 3 months ago, the way you take your coffee, the name of the colleague who frustrated you last Tuesday. They remember because they are studying you. Not in a detached or clinical way, in the way you study something that matters enormously to you. They will never lead with this information. They won't say, "I've been thinking about what you said," but every now and then it slips out. A reference to something you barely remember saying. And in that moment, You are glimpsing the truth of how much space you take up in their internal world. Watch how they help you. The emotionally unavailable person in love does not speak in declarations. They speak in actions. They fix the thing that's broken. They research the problem you're dealing with before you even ask. They show up logistically, practically, quietly. To someone expecting romance, this looks like distance. But what it actually is, to someone who cannot access the words, is a full sentence spoken in a different language. The language is care, and they are fluent in it, even when every other channel is blocked. Watch what happens when you are in crisis. This is one of the clearest signals, and one of the least discussed. Emotionally unavailable people often become remarkably calm and focused when the person they love is in genuine distress. They don't freeze. They don't over-emote. They assess. They handle logistics. They become a stable presence at the exact moment when other people crumble. This is not emotional unavailability. This is love expressed through competence and protection, which is, for them, the most vulnerable thing they know how to offer. Watch the small physical gestures. Because when verbal intimacy is inaccessible, the body finds another route. A hand resting briefly on your lower back. Their feet touching yours under a table while you watch something together. The quiet proximity of choosing to be near you, even when no conversation is happening. These are not accidents. These are deliberate, conscious choices from a person who has learned to say in inches what they cannot say in words. And watch the jealousy. Because this one will surprise you. The person who seemed detached, who seemed unaffected, who seemed almost impossible to provoke. The moment someone else gets close to you, something emerges that they themselves did not know was there. A sharpness, a possessiveness, a sudden and intense need to reassert themselves in your orbit. Jealousy requires investment. You cannot be jealous over something you don't deeply want to keep. There is one more thing I want to talk about, and it is the detail that I think is the most overlooked piece of this entire conversation. It is something called the vulnerability hangover. You have probably experienced this with the person you're thinking about, and had absolutely no framework to understand it. Here is what happens. They share something real with you, something personal, something from deep inside a space they normally keep locked. And then, within hours, sometimes within minutes, they disappear. They go cold. They become distant. And you sit there feeling like you did something wrong. Like the intimacy you just shared was a mistake. Like it pushed them away. But here is what is actually happening. They pushed past the boundary their nervous system had set. They offered emotional intimacy, which is the thing their entire internal architecture was built to avoid. And now their system needs to recover. It needs to retreat to safety, to process what just happened. The distance after the vulnerability is not rejection. It is the physiological cost of the bravest thing they know how to do. And when they come back, and they will come back, they come back having crossed a threshold they cannot uncross. Every time this happens, the distance gets a little shorter. Every time they survive being vulnerable with you, and you are still there on the other side, the proof of your safety inside their nervous system grows. I want to say something directly to you now, because I know that loving someone like this is exhausting. I know there are nights when you wonder if you are making all of this up, if you are reading into silences and memes and tiny gestures and building a love story out of breadcrumbs. I want to offer you this. The fact that you are asking that question does not mean you are delusional. It might mean you are the first person who has ever bothered to learn their language. Most people don't. Most people look at the emotional unavailability and see a closed door and walk away. You looked at it and asked what was behind it. That is not weakness. That is a rare and specific kind of attention that very few people know how to give. But here is the honest thing I also need to say. Understanding why someone loves you the way they do does not mean you are required to wait indefinitely for them to be able to show it. Understanding their neurobiology does not mean your needs stop existing. The work of becoming emotionally available, of rewiring a nervous system that learned love was dangerous is real, and it is possible. Neuroplasticity research confirms that the same brain mechanisms that created these patterns can transform them. Change is not a myth, but it requires the person inside those walls to want to change, to be willing to do the work, and to recognize that the person standing on the other side of their fear is worth the terrifying process of letting them in. So here is where we land. The emotionally unavailable person who is madly in love with you is not cold. They are not incapable. They are someone whose nervous system learned, in the years before they had any say in the matter, that closeness was the most dangerous thing in the world. And you, through your consistency, your presence, and your refusal to leave when they expected you to, have become the evidence that contradicts everything they were taught. That is not a small thing you have done. That is a profound disruption of a story someone has been living inside for most of their life. They may not be able to tell you yet. They may not have the words, the access, or the safety to say it out loud. But if you watch for the micro details they remember, the quiet ways they serve you, the way they calm down in a crisis instead of crumbling, the way the distance gets shorter every time they come back, the way something fierce wakes up in them at the thought of losing you, you will see it. It is there, it is real, and it is speaking to you in the only language it currently knows. The question is whether you can hear it.